from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Revolution Radio. You don't need to expect us. We're all...
Hi everybody, it's me, the Fetch, host of Inside the Eye Live. Before the Sunday mainstream media political pundit talk shows, there is Inside the Eye Live, where we break down some of the weekly mainstream media talking points before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, the Fetch, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And we're getting a lot of feedback. We'll probably have to switch to our cell phone again. Not sure what's going on. There it stopped. I am your host, Janet Kira Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lessin. And today we have an interview with George Green, who is a dear friend of ours, and we just hung out with him at the Star Wars USA conference in, what was it called, Laughlin, Nevada. George, before we start our show, George is a former investment banker and is probably the last person you'd expect to choose to communicate with, but that is exactly what happened to publisher George Green. And we're going to talk about the big pictures. UFO sightings are frequently reported, but how many people can actually say they regularly communicate with space beings? George has made an agreement to publish the extraterrestrial information to awaken us earthlings so we may all be in contact, those that choose to be. George will discuss how and when he saw his first spacecraft, subsequent investigation, and how things begin to happen in his life. So there's a lot of talking points. And they're on our website at aquarianradio.com. Pull up George Green. And let's see what else I can say about George. He is a former investment banker and a broker-dealer, securities underwriter, real estate developer, insurance broker, and publisher. He's a frequent guest on radio and TV talk shows. He is the publisher of Handbook for the New Paradigm, written by the ETs. And he is president of Global Insights, Inc., and he has spoken to thousands of people through his lectures and has appeared on numerous talk shows and TV shows telling his story. So let's see what else. He had a career in the military in the U.S. Air Force, where he encountered alien disc craft in a remote hangar at Edwards Air Force Base. Through playing Monopoly in corporate banking and large-scale construction, to working closely with the Pleiadians and other benevolent intelligences to wake people up in preparation for the coming changes. And very few people we have talked to have a span of personal experience and contacts, which is okay. This goes on and on. There's a wonderful long bio. I'll put a page up on Korean Radio. And before we pull on George to our show, Dr. Lessin, Sasha would like to say something.
Now, George gives me a lot of hope. Now, here's a guy who was in the inner circle of the power elite, but he had a spiritual breakthrough. George is the inventor of the derivative. But he knows the plans of the power elite, and he's got some direct message from the Pleiadians about what we can do. I'm looking forward to this interview.
Welcome back to our show, George. Good to see you here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I'm losing my voice. I'm going to have Sasha talk a lot. Let's start with the beginning, I guess. Where do you want to go? You can tell us about the big picture, how you were contacted. You can go and tell us about the economy. It's a presidential election year coming up. Maybe you have some revelations there, some information that will help us make the right choice. Take it away, George.
Well, I think probably for your listener, I have to better come back and give you an idea of some of the background. My father was the third largest meat packer in Denver, and that's where I was born. And anyway, in the meatpacking business, when you go out and buy a load of cattle, the Packers and Stockyards Act says we have to pay for them in 24 hours. And then if we took the animals and we went and processed the animal, obviously, at the packing house, he's dead. But we would turn around and sell the finished product to the government. So I get a problem when we go pay for, to the farmer. They got their money, but the government paid us in 2 or 3 months down the line. So my job with my dad was to go down and to the different banks and borrow against my government receivables so I can buy more cattle, the game that we put down. So I got an education on borrowing because it was kind of a no-brainer, frankly, because I had government receivables and the banks loved that because they didn't have to maintain the reserves for them. And I had borrowed almost all the money from every bank in Denver on the 17th Street, which is the main one they had, with the exception of one. Anyway, by borrowing the money on it, one of the bankers come to me and he says, George, he says, you've got a lot of friends with money. If you'll put more money into our bank, we'll be able to loan you money. And I says, what do you mean? And he says, well, because we can only loan you up so much based on our capital reserves. And I said, let me look at your book. So anyway, I looked over all the books on it, and then that's when I discovered that if I put in $1 million in the bank, they can loan out $10 million, or 10 times the deposits of the depositors. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
Okay, now, so what happened is, and I'm looking at this thing, and I says, well, you can make a lot of money on this, because at that time, they were paying 5% to the depositors, so if they put in $1 million, they have to pay them, $50,000. But if they loan the money out at 8%, the same money, they make about, as you can see, about $30,000. But the advantage of the banks, they call it fractional reserve. The bank could take that $1 million, make a loan out $10 million, and make the same 8%. But now they're making what? $800,000. You understand the difference now?
Yes.
So, okay, what happened is that I'm looking at the deal and I says, well, I got a lot of friends that I can help put money in it. At that time, they were giving you a television set or radios or whatever to go put your money into the bank if you put in $10,000 in for 1 year. So I analyzed the books and I said, now this is all advertising. They said, right. And I said, I got a better deal for you. You guys pay me 3% up front for your advertising, and that's 3% of the deposits you want, and I'll put whatever you want to in the bank. So I did that. So I'll give you an illustration. One bank ordered $5 million. So, of course, they pay me 3% on $5 million. That was $150,000. Well, in order for me to get the $5 million, I called my friends on the phone, and I said, hey, guys, if you'll put money into a bank, I'm going to write a check out to you for 2% in advance. All I have to do is deposit in the bank. It's your money, your everything else, and that's the end of the story. They said, great. So I did that. So what happened is the bank, because all of a sudden your increases, your return is increased by 40% with no risk whatsoever. You turned around, you told all your buddies, so I had people sending me money from all over the country. Well, the bankers also liked that because all of a sudden they can get all the money they wanted to, and it was again through me. So what happened, after a few months, I became pretty famous all over the place. But meanwhile, the Federal Reserve did not like what I was doing, so they notified the state of Colorado that I had to get a license. I said, hey, look, I studied law and business at the University of Illinois, and I studied engineering at the Colorado School of Mines and a couple other colleges, so I got a lot of education. And I told them, I said, I love exams, bring it on. And they said, well, we don't know what to do because we've never had this license before. I said, no problem. I said, I'll call my friend, happened to be Peter Dominic, the state senator, and I said, I'm going to get the accounting book for the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, because that way we can have something that you guys can give me a license on. And so they said, that's great. Anyway, I got the books. After going over them, they don't have a definition of money. I mean, they list what money is, but if I read it all to you, you would see that the state was very confused. And for your listeners, if they really want it, they can email me and I'll send them a copy of it and they read it for themselves. At any rate, what happened at that point, I'm sitting with the state and we're joking about it. I says, now what you going to do? And they said, well, we don't know what to do. And I says, you can't stop me from what I'm doing because I'm not really doing anything. I'm just advising my friends of putting money there. And they said, well, you got to quit doing that. And I said, I'll tell you what, let's consider money some kind of security. And they agreed with that was okay. So what happened is they said I had to become a registered financial principal. That's an underwriter of securities. And I said, bring it on. So anyway, I became a registered financial principal and a broker-dealer and a securities underwriter of all securities. By going through that and getting the license and everything in the position, I said, oh, my God, another license to steal. That's the whole securities business. Well, as we're going down here, in other words, if you came to me and you wanted $1 million, for instance, for putting up a new business, I could issue stock on that. And then my friends would go ahead and invest in buying your stock from them. You got your money. As the underwriter, I have a requirement. And the requirement as the underwriter is I have to maintain a market, because if you bought the stock and you wanted to sell it, somebody has to buy it. Isn't that right? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, in the securities business, what we do is we make deals with other brokers across the country because they're always looking for new products. So that's exactly what happens. That's the game of the stock market. What happens is they find a new security or new something, and they're out pumping it to all their people, and by buying it, and then they start buying it from each other, they raise the price of the stock arbitrarily. It may or may not be worth anything, but it's going. It's just going up. Mm-hmm. Well, what happened is, and I'll just tell you, I became very successful in doing that, but after a couple of years I was in the business, the stock market crashed 20% in one day. Yeah. In other words, you probably remember that. Anyway, when it did that, I'm sitting back here looking at it. Of course, people, if they're want to dump stocks, they got to sell it. Well, as an underwriter, I got to buy them. But I knew what the company was worth, and I'm sitting there, wait a minute, do I want to expose myself to this kind of malarkey? Because I knew it was just a big crapshoot, frankly. Mm-hmm. So what happened is I called my other brokers. We had a meeting in Denver with my friends, and we shut our firms down. And because I didn't want to take the risk for it to, wipe my family out or anybody else. So what happened is the Federal Reserve, that private bank, put 8 members on the floor of the stock exchange in New York right now. They call them the Plunge Protection Team. So their job, in case the market crashes, is basically, they'll go ahead and buy the stocks or do whatever happened. Now, remember, just a couple of years ago, they come in and the whole stock market crashed. You remember that? And then the Federal Reserve stepped in, and what happened is they rescued all the underwriters of stocks and made everybody whole, right? Mm-hmm. The only thing they didn't do, and this is where I got involved with what we're talking about, the Federal Reserve notified the state that, they notified every bank in the United States not to do business with me because I became so powerful. If the bank didn't pay me the percentage again for the next year, I would jerk all that money out. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, the bank loaned all the money out. You understand? Right. Well, if they loaned it out and I got control of the 10% of the deposits, which I did, then I became very powerful, and I was kind of invited to the inner circle of the guys that are running this country. Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, we're coming along. When they notified all the banks to close it, I didn't have a problem because there was another outfit at that time called the Savings and Loans. Remember those?
I do.
Okay, well, what happened is the savings and loans loan the money out on mortgages. You remember that? Primarily that's on houses. You know, or apartment, whatever they would, didn't make any difference to me. Well, Jane Shaler, U.S. Life Savings Loan in Los Angeles, called me on the phone. She says, come on out here, George. She says, I know you can help us. So I'm going out there, and I'm analyzing. They say that you can get us some more money from our bank. So I moved all the money I had in the banks went into the S&Ls, except for Jane's deal. She had a lot. So I said, I got another solution. I said, at that time I had an office in New York City. I said, I'm going to go back and I'm going to talk to my brokers and in New York City about this situation. I said, I have a real problem with it because if I put 1,000 mortgages together, you know, like a little package, I can't determine what the value is. How am I going to sell the thing? Because every mortgage has got a different maturity date, a different, you know, amount of interest, all kinds of things, and it was really hard to do that. Well, sitting around with my buddies in New York, we got one of my friends got up and he said, we can help you, we can both make money at this. And I says, well, how are you going to do that? And they said, we'll insure them. That's AIG, insurance.
Right.
Does that explain to you why they rescued AIG when the market crashed? Because what these are derivatives. Now, what happened then, the guys in New York, you know, outside of me, they said, oh my gosh, we can do this with everything. So they spread them out, and they've been selling derivatives all over the world. There's over 100 trillion of derivatives out there. There's no such animal as far as money, but that's what's running it. And the derivative means derived off of. And all of these things are just pooled. And what they've done also is pooled derivatives. In other words, if I took 1,000 mortgages and put another 1,000 together, both of them are separate derivatives, but they made a derivative on top of a derivative.
Oh, my goodness.
Does that give you an answer for what's going on in the stock market today? Meanwhile, the stockbrokers up there are sitting in a position they don't make any money unless they sell the stocks. Well, of course, you've got to be in cahoots with your buddy stockbroker, and he's going to put you into the right place. Well, he basically has nothing to do with it, and the only thing he does is make a fee for transferring the stock. Well, then we got a better deal. Income people say, well, we got to retire. I told them, I says, my wild card and all this stuff, because I was in the insurance business, I says, the wild card in this whole game that we're looking at is inflation. And I said, I don't know how to protect my investors particularly. I said, I'm going to investigate this in big detail. Because I don't care if you put your money in whatever, what is an inflation rate is out here? What is it for real right now? In other words, you and I went out and bought a steak last week. What did it cost compared to a year ago?
Right.
You understand? Mm-hmm. Well, they tell us that inflation is only up 2% because they use the figures they want to of the stuff, and it isn't the stuff that people are consuming. Because all the stuff's gone up to 8 to 10%, except for, of course, gasoline now has collapsed, right? Okay, so what we're looking at is a huge monopoly game. I'm just explaining the background for your listeners of what the money game is all about. And the money, they don't have a definition of it. It's merely something that they exchange, and money has different features throughout the world. And, you know, in other words, what we consider money here may be different over there. And the Federal Reserve, when they look at money that is on deposit for a year has a value more than money that is immediately, changed. So all of this stuff goes into sequence of what happened. Well, they finally sent a letter to every bank in the United States not to do business with me. So what happened is I started my own bank in the state of Colorado outside the Federal Reserve. Now, the only problem is the Federal Reserve is a big franchise. It's a private bank. If you join the deal, you set up, you can loan out 10 times the amount of money. You got to share some of the profits with the Federal Reserve. That's the reason why they have branches all over. Well, if I started my own bank, which I did, I got the state to guarantee the deposits, not the Federal Reserve or, FDIC, this private bank again. Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation is a corporation. Has nothing to do with their government, except for when you come back to Congress, the politicians and everything, they're all together. Politics is two words. This is for your listener. It's easy to remember. Poly means many, and ticks are bloodsuckers.
Many bloodsuckers, okay.
Okay, now let's go back to the question that you brought about. You just asked me as we started up what's coming up with the elections. Well, during this period of time, I was running around with the guys in Washington. They're basically controlling the people in Washington. Anyway, they invited me to a private meeting up in Aspen. I took my 2 daughters with me so they could go skiing. I walked into the room, and the world leaders were there, and I said, what am I here for? And they say, well, we owe you a favor. We would like you to become the finance chairman for the next president. And I said, president of what? They said, president of the United States. And I said, why me? And I said, I just started this $100 million project. They said, don't worry about that. We'll put that on ice. And I said, well, who's going to be the next president? Now, this was 2 years before he became president. So they said, Jimmy Carter. And I said, Jimmy who? And they said, well, he's the Democratic governor of Georgia. And I said, but I've been voting Republican. Paul Volcker walks over and he says, son, don't worry about it. We control them both. Well, I knew that. He's chairman of the Federal Reserve, controls all the money, right? Okay, so they set it up in motion. Jimmy, in order to become president, had to do certain things. Number one, he had to give away the Panama Canal, which he did. He also was, one of the other things, Henry Kissinger says our number one problem on the planet, now Sasha, you know what the number one problem is. We're increasing the population on the planet 250,000 a day, 2.5 million every 10 days. Anyway, Kissinger said in the meeting that at that time there was about 6.2 billion people on the planet. Now remember, this is like 20 years ago. Right now, there's 8.3 billion on the planet.
Oh, I thought it was only something. So
I'm just telling you. Now you start being that. Now, from an economic standpoint, if you're a big guy and you got things running, you say, "Oh, great, we got more people to buy all this stuff." Well, the trouble is, we're running out of product everywhere. Believe it or not, we're consuming all the goods so fast, and we're running the prices up, and we don't have any replacement for a lot of things. Meanwhile, because of the environmental impact, we're polluting the planet. As you know, what they're doing in China today? They got warnings both in Beijing and all of that to put masks on it because the air is so polluted. Now, when I was in China with the leaders over there, I was a guest running around the country. You have no idea what 1.3 billion people are until you go among them, just to get an idea. And they're all up to speed right now. They're all consuming everything. They're buying all of with the dollars that they've made, because just about everything in this country is made in China right now, as you probably are aware. Well, meanwhile, the Chinese are sitting back. Anyway, they're joking with me. I'm with the leaders in Beijing, and they said, look, it's 5,000 years. It's our turn to run the world. Now, they are long planners. It's not necessarily immediately. They look for them and their families and everything in the future. But they put into position right now, this last week, the Chinese currency is now considered a trading thing. It's going to be a reserve currency for all countries. Now, our reserve currency, of course, the dollar. But the problem is that our dollar is worthless. We're 100 trillion in debt with no assets. The Federal Reserve has already borrowed all the money out of the Social Security accounts for people. They've issued bonds, and these bonds are issued by the year. In other words, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 years. And they're only out 5 years. And that bonds, in other words, they borrowed enough money to cover the Social Security recipients for the next 5 years at this point. Now, the problem is they borrowed it from who? The Federal Reserve, who, again, is playing the game for the Social Security. So people that are getting Social Security funds right now, which is approximately, in the United States, we got 325 million, and it's about 40 million of them drawing some kind of government benefit right now. Now, they think it was their retirement funds. That's what they think, based on the Social Security problems. Now, when I was an underwriter, I analyzed the Social Security, and the problem with the whole Social Security deal was they left out inflation. Now, they put it in there, but again, they're calculating, like right now, this year, there's no increase in people's Social Security at all. Did inflation go up?
Yes.
Well,
go buy some food and you'll see inflation in action.
Exactly. And so that's where we're looking at two things with the food deal is you got to make sure that you got food ahead, and a lot of the food is no longer available. There's a lot of species that are dying off, and that's because of the environmental changes right now. Because of what's going on in the atmosphere at this minute, we're killing off 1,000 life forms a day. Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So and all the junk is going into the oceans, which is there's what they say 70 what we call dead zones in the ocean right now. Now it is they're small packets all over the place where nothing is growing. I mean, as you know, a lot of the coral reefs are dying. The fish, there's not that many big fish that are running around. I mean, they're out there, but it's not like it used to be. I mean, we were just on a cruise. We didn't see any big fish at all going all the way from down, in the whole Caribbean. And on the West Coast, the last time we went to Alaska, we didn't see anything either. We didn't even see any whales. So it's kind of an interesting game that's coming down in front of us. Meanwhile, what's happening to all the crops and all the weather? I own 2 coffee farms in Costa Rica. The heat down there has changed all the coffee, so nobody's buying it anymore.
Wow.
So, of course, you don't drink coffee, so you guys are good at that point. So now we have to look at what do we do to maintain it as a society. Now, I'm just bringing you this small items as we went up. Well, anyway, I'll go back to the money game. I'm well aware of what goes on in the money game on the thing, and I set in on the plans. I'll go back to the meeting again I had in Aspen. I said, well, my first question is, again, what does a finance chairman do? I mean, that's, they want me to be the finance chairman for the next president. I'd like to know what the job description is. And they said, well, you sit down with Ted. So I'm with Ted Kennedy. You heard of him. Anyway, Ted and I were sitting there joking, and he says, George, you're really good with money. We're going to send you out to all the state Democratic functions to raise money for the Democratic Party, and you're going to meet some real foxy ladies, and you're going to have a good time. And I said, okay. And just then my daughter walks in, and Ted looks at her, and he says, wow, I got to go to bed with that. And I said, no, you don't, Ted. That's my daughter, and she's 14. And he says, I don't care. I was so livid. Now, I have to understand there was world leaders in the room. I just got up, walked across the room. I'm talking with Pierre Trudeau and his wife. Now, you know who Pierre was, the Prime Minister of Canada. Anyway, I'm talking to him. I didn't have any problem with this stuff and what they were telling me, but then I'm looking down on his wife. This is Pierre Trudeau's wife. There's a little half cigar box full of white powder. Something hit me at that time. I said, I don't know. I got to think about this. Now, this was a Friday. And I said, guys, this is one of these long weekends. There were, you have 4 days. I says, I'll set in on your meetings on what you guys have got, and I'm going to let you know what I want to go along with this. Well, my ego was out there. I was getting ready to build a big city, frankly. The week before, I was at the Beverly Hills Hotel, having lunch with Bill Levitt. Now, Bill Levitt is Levittown, Pennsylvania, Levittown, New York. He made all his money building stuff after World War II. Anyway, Bill and I were discussing building cities and stuff like that. At any rate, I said, this was during the weekend. I said, I'm going over there. And what they said that, again, Jimmy Carter had to do was to get World War III started in the Middle East. Now, exactly what do you think he did? What do you think Iraq was all about?
Right.
It's all because as we just got through talking about, there's how many people on the planet? 8.3 billion? Now, we'll digress a little bit. If you check in with the Population Institute in Washington, D.C., and it's part of the World Watch Association, they're funded by all the major corporations in the world to keep track of all the goods that are coming. Now, you can pull them up on the Internet. Just pull up World Watch Association and read all the articles, and then you'll see what kind of a dilemma we're in. Mm-hmm. Well, at any rate, I'm looking at this stuff. Meanwhile, back in my earlier days when I was running around, I started analyzing this whole thing about the planet and what's going on in this thing, and then I got in contact with, let's digress a little bit. My first, when I joined the Air Force when I was very young, And I was in airborne communications, airborne electronics, so I worked on all the airplanes setup. But because I was such a smart ass, frankly, they sent me to Edwards Air Force Base, which is the Air Force Research and Development Center. So I worked on all the super secret things that we had. Well, one morning they sent me out to do the post-flight inspection on the X-15. That's the forerunner of the space shuttle. And it's nothing more than a rocket on skids, frankly. Anyway, it was the last week in August, because I'll never forget this, and it was 100 degrees at 10 o'clock. Well, they don't let you work when it's over, 100 degrees, because too much takes out of you. At any rate, what happened is, though, my ego, they gave me a Jeep to run around, because I had to run around all the places where the planes and stuff were. And anyway, I had the Jeep. I only had about 10 miles on it, and they'll take it away from me unless I put 25 miles on it. Well, there was 2 hangars up there close to where the X-15 landed I hadn't been to. Now, I was cleared for top secret, so it didn't make any difference. But I took my little bug over there, and I went inside, and there's a big round circular disc. Now, I gave you an idea. This was in 1958. In 1958, we still had tube radios, tube TVs. Remember all those stuff?
Yes.
We also had black and white pictures. You didn't have color photographs. You didn't have any of that, just to give you an idea how this thing is accelerated so quickly. Anyway, I'm 10 feet away from this round craft. Now, I just thought it was one of our one of our things that we were working on, because I'd been working on some very strange vehicles. But so anyway, I tooled back into my CO and I asked him, I said, when can I work on that round craft? And he says, you saw that? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, that's an ion-powered craft designed by Sikorsky, the helicopter people, for use in outer space. And I said, great, when can I work on it? Now think about the words, ion-powered, use in outer space in 1958.
Right.
Imagine? Okay, well, anyway, I'm going back to my CO. I said, well, great, when can I work on it? And he says, you can't, it's still a civilian project. Well, anyway, I said, okay, big deal, I'm not going to work on it for a bit. I figured I'd do it later, At any rate, I go back, and my buddy happened to be the base photographer. He says, slip me some pictures of the craft. And he said, what'd they tell you? And then he didn't say another word. He just says, come on with me. So I went over to the photo lab, and he's showing me pictures of the craft. Now, I'm 10 feet away from it, so I'm not going to forget it. But the 2 dead aliens got my attention. They were similar to the ones, those little grays that you see in the movies. That's what they look. Humanoid looking, but just small. Well, I'm a little mad now. I'm top secret. I'm all rah-rah for everything going on. So I went down and confronted my commander. Why did he lie to me? And, of course, the first half hour was a debriefing on my top secret clearance and what they can do to you. And then after that, his last words to me, he said, look, when the government's ready to tell the truth about UFOs and ETs, they will. Until then, you stick to your story. Well, here I'm involved with all kinds of crazy things. I mean, I'm looking at here as how we're reintroducing the technology. I mean, look at the we have right now. You get in everything, it's got a chip in it, right? It's got the diodes in it. This is all taken off of alien craft. Yes. How do you think we jump from tubes right now? All of a sudden, you got wraparound 3D TV, right? Right. This stuff is all taken off of the alien craft that we had, and the one at Edwards was just one of the craft. There were several more of them. They were down at Area S4, as other places, and the Roswell deal. They had one that they picked up. There was about 8 weeks before the Roswell, New Mexico one, where they dragged the craft across the border from Mexico because it landed there and went up to Wright-Pat. And Wright-Patterson had a bunch of a different craft too. So we've been doing a lot of stuff, just so you know, in that area. Well, I'm getting all wound up, and I'm looking at all this stuff. I know we have ETs, we have, this stuff that's going on, and I know the public has to be kept, asleep, except for like yourself and your listeners. They want to know what's happening. Well, it turns out, as I'm going about this, I find out from the information and the data that we already had that this planet was engineered for 500 million people. In other words, it was an engineered planet. And I said, how did they do that? And then I found out that our government already has these documents. Their information shows that all the different races come from a different star system. Welcome to planet Earth, which is the present planet, frankly. And this planet has always been used for that, and you can go back 1 million years. You can see humanoids, and there's got a lot of information that's coming out because of people like yourself that are investigating to see out for yourself. Well, I'll kind of bring you up to date with this. As I'm going through this thing, there's 500 million people. I'm looking at what they want to do is get World War III started, and then what I call the fly in the ointment to me, which was really mad, they asked me to build an enemy prisoner of war camp in downtown Las Vegas. Now, I got a copy of the contract. I'm sitting here and I'm having lunch with Ted Gunderson, the former head of the FBI for Southern California. You can pull him up on the internet. Anyway, Ted and I were buddies. Anyway, Ted's sitting here, he said, give me that, and he come back, he says, they're changing the name, and they're building them all over the country. They're calling them FEMA camps, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. You've heard of that, too.
Yes, we have.
Okay, well, anyway, I have contracts of all this. I got my contract with them. I'm sitting with the guys and what they have planned, and their plan is to get what? Carter was supposed to get World War III started. Well, they haven't got it started. They're behind schedule. So watch the Middle East. Now, meanwhile, because we're hopelessly in debt, and we're sitting back here, and the China's setting this thing up in motion, on part of the FEMA regulations that they have, all Obama has to do at this minute is call a national emergency. In other words, if we get some of these the terrorists, as they're calling right now, the ISIS and all the rest of them, start blowing things up, all Obama has to do is call a national emergency that immediately suspends the Constitution and such, and we do not have any voting.
So he could gain power.
Well, except for one thing wrong. According to the rule book, what they said it in the motion, he only becomes president for 1 month. After that, the head of the UN takes over our country.
Oh.
This is already law. Now, part of that is if he calls this, you're going to go to, and again, I'm setting in on the meetings on what they got planned. You're going to have to go to the post office and register, and you're going to get the new ID card. Most people are already getting them with the chip in it. Now, there was discussion, just so you know, there was discussion of putting chips into people, but we're joking with it about the whole deal. There's going to be so many dead people in the street, you'll be able to just cut their chip out. So they've kind of eliminated that. Isn't that terrifying?
Okay, so we're going to go cut chips out of dead people, so we have...
No, we're not. No, you're just going to get the card with all the chips in it, and you'll have your ID and your thumbprint and all your medical... The doctors are now have to send all your medical records right now to Kansas City where they're taking them on, and they've got to get World War III started to reduce the world's population, again, back down to 500 million, which is their goal, and only 20 million Americans are expected to be left alive.
Can I ask you a question about that 500 million figure? Because that's on the Georgia Guidestones. Did that go up when Carter was president, the Georgia Guidestones?
They were put up right after he was. Remember, it's in Georgia. Yeah, it's right there. Yeah, they put him up after that.
Right.
And the Georgia Guidestones say exactly what I'm saying.
So to me, this is, I'm just going to say this is a bit illogical, 500 million. It seems they could have had it at that number all along. They told us to go out and be fruitful and multiply. We've had the Pope who says, don't use birth control. So it seems like there's some kind of the conflict was the various religions, because the religions, in order to get more people, you go have them. Also, the educational system. You have to understand, we've got a lot of people in the world that still don't read. I mean, back in 1900, fewer than 5% of the Americans could read or write. Did you know that? Didn't know that.
What's happening, we've educated the people, and I really don't like the word education right now, because the education is left out, or they've lied to us. Like, they don't teach history anymore. History is 2 words, his story, all written by the victor. Now, biblically speaking, depending on which, thing that you have, they show back, go forth and multiply to get more members in the group. And beside that, they didn't have a lot of population back in that time when they were writing these things anyway. Mm-hmm. At the same boat, they weren't aware of all of the bigger information. So when you're coming back, you can't rely on well, you have to be careful of the Bibles that you're looking at because there's so many of them that they've changed. In other words, it says to give you an idea, there's 200 versions of the King James Bible. And most of them took them off, originally of the Geneva Bible and then before that. The Greek Bible is probably the one that has some of the stuff on it, but some of the books that had the truth, like the Book of Enoch, they took it out because it had the truth of what was going on the planet. Meanwhile, if you read the book of Genesis, it talks about the so-called gods coming down from the heavens and mating with the women. Where do you think they came from? The extraterrestrials again. Now, my extraterrestrial deal, and I built a house in Aspen, and my housekeeper had a book called UFO Contact from the Pleiades. Incredible color photographs of exactly the same thing I saw at Edwards Air Force Base. Now, that got my attention. I'm sitting here, now this is 1984. I'm looking at this big picture book. It's like big 12 by 12 inch picture book. And I'm saying, well, my gosh, this is out here. Why doesn't the newspapers and everybody come forth with this stuff? And so anyway, what happened is the couple that did it were in Phoenix, and I flew down to Phoenix and I talked to them. And I said, how you guys doing, and we're a little bit more about your information. And they said, look, we're investigating a man in Switzerland who claimed to be in contact with beings from the star system, the Pleiades, who said that the Pleiadians had engineered this planet for 500 million people. Now, the word engineer means you're basically, if we go engineer a project right now, we find out how big it is to build a building, how much concrete it's going to take, or even as a farmer, you engineer the farm. How much space do you need? How much water do you need? In other words, the engineering on it. Well, anyway, they said they come back to the same thing, that we engineered this planet for 500 million people, which is the maximum, because they go around looking for planets, frankly, to inhabit. So what happened is, I'm sitting here looking at these documents, and I said, look, guys, I'm willing to help you, because I think the world needs to know that. But when I was in the service, of course, I signed all these top secret clearances, right? And I'm looking at these things that were, according to our government, was not to be released to the public. I said, I tell you what I'll do is I'll loan you all the money to publish your books with this thing. I'm loaning it to you. When you get through selling your books, give me my money back. I don't want any interest or anything else. And you go out ahead and have a good time. You're going to educate the public, and I'm going to do what I'm doing. At that time, I was building shopping centers, office buildings, and restaurants across the United States. Well, 22 of them. Anyway, I was, playing a game of Monopoly in a big way. What happened is, 90 days after I gave them the money, they sent me back the accounting. They'd received 3 times the amount of money I gave them, but there was no check. I called them on the phone. I said, where is it? And they said, well, we found out who you are. You don't need it. And I said, wait a minute. So anyway, I flew down to Phoenix, and I filed suit against them. I was already building down there anyway, but so my attorneys would handle. I says, go get my money back. That's all I want.
Yeah.
Anyway, they had given me a lot of documents, however. They were, this man in Switzerland, Billy-Meier, had, and they fell in line with all the information I had received when I was studying stuff like at mines and other places I was getting data, that it kind of filled in the blanks for me. So what happened is I grabbed the next plane and I flew out to Switzerland myself, my wife and I. We got over there, I rented a car, and it's about 45 minutes outside of Zurich is where they're at, in Hinter Schmidt-Rudi. That's a town called Schmidt-Rudi, and Hinter is behind. Anyway, I went into the little place, knocked on the door, and a young lady answered the door. Her name was Bruni, and I said, I'm George Green. I put the money up for the movie, which I did, and I said, and the books that are being published about your material. And I said, I want to talk to Billy. And she says, we're not talking to Americans. And I said, well, you go back and tell Billy who I am. And I says, because I think your information should be given to the world. She come back about 10 minutes later, and she said, Mr. Green, all Americans are crooks. They come over and they take our pictures and our material, and they promise to help us, and they don't do anything. And she says, besides that, Shirley MacLaine was here 2 months ago, and she promised to help us, and nothing has happened. And I said, okay. Well, it's late in the afternoon. I guess I'm just going to head off to Austria and make a vacation out of this thing then. So we went and checked in the motel. Anyway, next morning at 7 o'clock, knocking on the door, here was Bruni. She handed me, knocked on the door. She says, here, she handed me a 2-page message signed by Quetzal. That was the Pleiadian commander of the project, inviting us back over to the compound. Anyway, the next week I got my mind blown. Everything I thought I knew about everything is basically based on a lie. You can see how the people have manipulated everything in order to take control. Well, we joked. When I was running around with the guys, we joked about it. We figured that if you weren't smart enough to get up to where we were, you deserved to be there. Well, we come to the position, like, when I was playing around with the people up there, I mean, they don't know the banks. The Rockefellers have all the banking system, but you've got all these 30 families, if you want to look around the planet, that basically control everything, and that's exactly what you're looking at today. Well, anyway, I'm sitting here with the information from the Pleiadians on this stuff, and I said, look, I'll tell you what I want to do. And I told Billy, I said, look, my problem that I have is I think your story is fantastic. I says, I have an office and a house in Beverly Hills, and my friends are basically in the movie industry. And I said, well, when I'll go back there, I'm going to get this thing squared away. And I said, my attorneys, however, I've got a problem. You've given away the worldwide rights to your story to the people that I have down at Phoenix who I'm suing. I said, but I'll get that taken care of. So when I got back to Beverly Hills and I talked to my attorneys, Dern, Mason, and Flound, just so you know, that's the attorneys for the Screen Actors Guild. I figured if they can, break a contract, they could. So anyway, I come into Dern, and I said, look, I made a deal with extraterrestrials and a guy in Switzerland to publish the truth about UFOs and stuff. And of course, he looks at me like I'm a nut, but he could care less at that time. $200 an hour was, what he wanted. So anyway, that lasted for about 5 weeks. He called me on the phone. He said, come back over. And I came over. And he says, George, he says, we got it arranged. We got a judge that will be willing to hear the case, but you got to get Billy over here because you got to do the courts in our system. And I says, I recognize that. So from his office, this is on 1600 Avenue of the Flakes, if you're familiar with Beverly Hills, we called Billy, and I'm on the phone talking to Billy-Meier. And Billy says, George, I showed you pictures of San Francisco being, or the West Coast basically destroyed by a major earthquake. And he says, I have 3 children, and I'm safe here. And I said, well, he's not going to come over. And I said, well, I'm going to have to figure another way to get this thing because I got to comply with those stupid law, the laws that are over here. And he said, okay. Well, when we left, now this is in broad daylight, the extraterrestrials had a beam ship following us in broad daylight going down the highway. I'm a little SL convertible, a little Mercedes. And we're sitting here pointing at other people. I don't know if they saw it or not. It didn't make any difference. We did. It was just reminding me everything was happening to me was real. Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, the long and short of that, of the next few, the few months we started playing around with trying to get this stuff out, I was finding out how much was being covered up, how much information was put out. Then I met another man named Colonel Wendell Stevens, who happened to be really involved in this stuff. And Wendell, however, didn't have the money, and so what I decided to do, just for fun, I would go out to places, because Wendell probably was the biggest authority on UFOs at that time now. He was a retired colonel that was involved. Anyway, I started meeting people all over the place, including astronauts, and all of a sudden finding out the real truth about what's going on with our space program and all this crazy stuff. I ended up I was in Berlin. Before they took the wall down, was escorted into Russia by some friends, so I got to see where they're at. They're way ahead of us. Like I say, everything I turned around turned out to be a lie. It's like my son happens to be a nuclear physicist. He's a senior engineer with Bechtel, and he spent 3.5 years in the secret cities in Russia. And he come back, he said, Dad, you watch them shut down NASA, and you see the Russians about 12 years ahead of us on the nuclear program. And then we went into some of that. Like there's 3 Russian submarines on the West Coast right now, 3 on the East Coast, and these submarines are loaded with nuclear warheads currently standing by, and there's 2 of them in the Gulf of Mexico. I just lectured in New Orleans, and in the newspapers they had a big picture of one of them down there because it came up, wrecking the fishing area. Because if fisherman goes out, they have certain places where they can fish. Well, anyway, one of the Russian subs came up. Wow. Then I was in San Diego with one of our naval commanders, and they're all upset because they can go out to 12 miles. After the 12 miles, the Russian ships out there, and they're mooning our troops as we go out there. So they're getting ready for World War III. Does that give you any more information?
Whoa.
Okay, so the Russians don't like us. They're going to do World War III.
But we got.
We're all going to die.
We've got our submarines around Russia, and everybody's got submarines around everybody else.
Exactly, except for the Russians are so far ahead of us, their technology. I don't know if you knew this, the first nuclear bomb exploded in Tagungsta, Siberia in 1908.
So what was that about? Was that extraterrestrial?
Well, no, the information was given to the Germans at that time that the planet was engineered again when we were getting ready to flip on its axis. You do know we're entering a cycle right now, this 26,000-year cycle where probably our planet's going to flip on its axis at any time now. Well, the ETs are telling me within the next 20 years. Well, the North Pole's already switched 14 degrees. If you noticed a lot of the changes on your compasses, I mean, everything's being changed right in front of you, and the people don't know it. Well, anyway, that Tagungsta, Siberia deal was their calculations, and I've got interviews with people that were alive at the time on the same thing, verifying it. But anyway, it was sent up. The problem was involved in that they were calculating the wrong directions because the planet had flipped already on its axis, and it should have been in another direction at the time that they did it. But anyway, the Germans brought it back, and the Germans they were experimenting with the nuclear bombs big time. In fact, the Thin Man and the Fat Man were German bombs that we took and dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. At the same time, at the end of Russia got the best German scientists on the nuclear ones, and we got Werner von Braun and the rest of them, as my guys down in New Mexico were talking about, because then we started experimenting with nuclear ourselves, and like idiots, this is us, we sent up a nuclear bomb in the higher atmosphere. And what happened is we put all this radiation around the whole planet. It's about 4 miles thick, which is eating holes through the ozone, as you and I are speaking, which is allowing the gamma and ultraviolet rays to come down on the planet. So we're basically, as you can see, radiating ourselves and killing ourselves off. Does that make you feel secure?
Have World War III, we're just going to get radiated and start dying en masse.
You are. What do you mean start? You already are. Right now, the West Coast, Hawaii, look at the islands. Go pull up World Watch about radiation and go read all the documents right now, what's going on because of Japan.
Right.
Now you read about the ETs say they're going to protect us in case of atomic, blowing off these bombs. And I talked to the ETs about that, and the reason why they'll do what they can, they're not allowed to interfere. We're going to do it ourselves. We may get it set up on it, but they're trying to protect us as best they can because nuclear bombs will disrupt the soul energy. Remember, the soul continues on. This body, this Renarek, it goes away, but your soul continues its journey. In fact, as you know, reincarnation was taught in all the religions until the year 553. That's when Father Origen and the Catholic Church basically tore out all things, because if you knew you came back again, then you'd be responsible, right? Mm-hmm. That's part of it. Anyway, they changed it all. Anyway, I ended up, when I'm back in Switzerland, making the deal with the ETs and the stuff on there to publish their information. I ended up being in contact with several different groups of ETs. It blew me away. I mean, I flew down to Brazil. There was a group of ETs that looked like people, like us, but they're plants. And they're my buddies as far as I'm concerned, because they breathe in our carbon dioxide and they make oxygen. Well, anyway, they had a cure for cancer. I got a sample of it. I flew the sample to Chemitox Labs in Boulder, Colorado. Took that sample, Dr. Alan Hynek. Remember him?
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, Heineck, I gave it to Heineck. I said, you got to help, because he said he was going to, help get this stuff out there. Well, it turns out, and this is a cure for one of the cures for cancer. Anyway, it turns out, I found out at that point, Heineck was two-timing because he was CIA. Mm. Isn't that fun? Anyway, the CIA, I became friends with some of them. CIA stands for Crooks in Action. And so I ended up, well, I ended up with a couple of them that spilled all the beans, and I got it from all different directions. I'm sitting here with a couple of the governors, for instance. The governor of Oklahoma gave me the whole book on the Oklahoma bombing. It's the same crew that took the Oklahoma bombing down, took down the Twin Towers.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to give you 2 minutes to break, so maybe we'll figure out a logical point. So, okay, so we're at the Oklahoma bombing and Twin Towers. We're going at rapid speed here. Go ahead, continue. We got at 56. We got 1 minute. And then
you got exactly what. Well, I'm just filling in on some of the blanks, and I think what we need to do is I hope I got the attention to your people to go to my website, nohoax.com, and you can read a lot of this stuff on my blogs and everything else to give you some of it, and we'll continue this after our paying our sponsors that are keeping this program together. Does that sound like a plan?
That sounds like a plan. We're waiting for the music in a couple seconds here. We're having a great time. And I hope we turn it around. Somehow we turn this around to a positive paradigm, because otherwise I'm going to go hide my head under the desk like I did.
No, the second half we're going to go into the next program. We're going to give you I'll give you a lot of solutions. That's what we're going to discuss. I've laid out the plans and what's going on, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, here we go.
If you don't know the swim, you better sing the hymn.
Okay, we'll be back in 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Tune in Tuesdays at 12 noon Eastern on Studio A to hear Tammy Adams share her knowledge of an unknown realm on Talking with Your Angels. Join Tammy as she uncovers hidden secrets about the spiritual world of angels, ghosts, and other entities that have been with us longer than we know. Tammy is a psychic, a teacher, spiritual coach, a leader in her field, and will be sharing her information and stories with you. So join us on Tuesdays at noon on Studio A. With Tammy's guidance, you'll find out who has been watching over you from the other side, and soon you will be talking with your angels.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com with your host, myself, Janet Kira Lessin, and my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lessin, and we have a guest, George Green. But before we get back to this incredible show, I'd like to remind everybody that Revolution Radio is listener supported, so please do go over to that donation button and donate what you can, $1, $5, $15, $20, whatever you can donate is greatly appreciated. And we do thank you very much for your donations, which allows Revolution Radio to bring you shows like ours, The Sacred Matrix, and many other shows on Studio A and Studio B. And, I just wanted to say, we're all going to die, live fast, have a lot of fun while you can. Sasha, what would you like to say before we bring back George?
Don't worry about the body. As long as you got your soul, you're still whole.
Well, that was the thing I wanted to talk about. The explosions interfere with the soul. We have to talk about that. But George, welcome back. We were talking about the Oklahoma bombings and the World Trade Center, and we're going to turn this around to some solutions, second half of the show. But what about how does the nuclear explosion interfere with the soul?
According to the ETs, it will disrupt the soul energy. In other words, it'll break it all apart. So not that I'm not sure about whether it's totally destroyed or not, but it's going. They're afraid it spreads it apart so much because your soul, as you know, weighs 22 grams. You're probably aware of that, and it continues on. Whatever our journey is, because we've selected this place and everybody's volunteering to come in and be physical this time because this is a great transition time and a great time to continue on. And there's many dimensions, as you know, many things that are happening simultaneously at this point because we're ending this cycle, which is kind of challenging at this second. Well, meanwhile, you and I have to survive. We have to understand this thing, and we have to understand who and what we are. And that's the basis of the information that I'm offering free to your listeners that are written. I'm the publisher for the ETs. And the book that we start out with is called The Handbook for the New Paradigm, which you can download free off of my website, nohoax.com. There's no charge. And then there's 2 other books to go along with that, and they're also downloading free. If you want hard copies, then go to our website or pick them up on Amazon or, those kind of things. Or invite me over to your city we'll do a lecture, because everybody that I do lecture, I give away books free.
Wow, that's wonderful, George.
Well, because if we don't look, my attitude at this point, because I understand the total figures from a very physical basis as well as the other one. If we don't do this, we're not going to have a planet left.
So let's talk about that. Is there any more bad stuff we got to get out of the way before we shift to the good stuff?
Well, I'm not. You know what? I'm just giving you an overview of the stuff, and you can verify everything I have. It's online all over, and you probably have guests in there, or people are sitting praying to angels or somebody else. But the trouble is, we're all angels made manifest, so they have to look at it. And I'm joking with the ETs. I'm asking questions about the same thing. And I said, well, what's above all this old mess? And they say, above all things is the creation. And what are we but a product of the thought of the creation made manifest? And as thought becomes manifest, it develops light. So as the light condenses, do you know, like you take a glass of water, and if you heat it up, it becomes hydrogen hydroxide, or, gas, 2 gases, right? You condense them, it becomes water, and you freeze them, it's solid. Well, if you take light and using the same idea and condensing it down, it's our periodic table of elements. Well, Sasha, how much are you in water? Your body.
Most.
That's right. So if you're looking at the other ones are small minerals and that, the only wild card you have, the only thing, is the electrical connections that we have with our conscious mind, and also the soul. The soul's connected to your heart. So if somebody has a heart transplant, the soul goes with it.
Oh my goodness.
Well, you heard about that. People have a personality change.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just telling you how this all changes about. Your conscious mind remains pretty much up there. We're trying to sort all this stuff down. But everything, if you notice, when you go have your dreams and on your big dream cycles, between midnight and 4 is when you're downloading from your conscious back to the soul level, even though the soul is totally aware of everything. Now the question is, how do you become awakened to what's going on? Now, you guys teach meditation a little bit. People should learn how to meditate or get still within and ask for guidance. Well, the little handbook has a little prayer in there that everybody should say. I am a human becoming. Help me become. By doing that constantly, setting your mind into motion, you can be in contact with other entities of other size in order to, because there's plenty of them want to keep this our planet going this way. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah.
I'm a human becoming. Help me become. Now you've given them permission to communicate with you directly. You don't need a big group of people because they don't like big groups, actually, because ego steps in. There's a whole rule book that we end up publishing on how to live in what we call they call it the spiritual laws and lessons of the universe. But from a basic, bigger program, and that's what I'm involved, there's only 4 little laws that you have to remember. The first law is the law of attraction. You know, what you put out, you're going to get back. Or what Christ said, what you sow, you shall reap, right? Mm-hmm. That's the first law. The second one is the law of intent, because all of thought is intent. When you intend something, you try to make it manifest. Am I right? Mm-hmm. Now, the third law is the law of allowance. And that means you got to allow your thought to be made, man. Allow it to go on whatever direction it is and how much effort you put on it. The fourth law, everybody ignores. It's got to be in balance within the universe. However, planet Earth is not in balance. So guess what? We got to go through all this thing, and I'm complaining because I'm sitting here. Everybody's running around with a cell phone or a computer right now, putting out frequency, which is affecting the process of communication with other dimensions.
Right.
Well, you know that. You just said right.
Yeah, I know, and we're doing this, and the computers and all this stuff is alien technology, which was reverse engineered from Roswell. And when they reversed, Corso said when they reverse engineered.
Oh, it was reversed before Roswell. Roswell was just part of that. Was just that's the Greys. The Greys are interesting because they were sharing a lot of technology. Dr. Benowitz was a friend of mine. Dr. Benowitz was the liaison between the Greys and our government. So I got a lot of details on what they did, but we've already had alien craft. I mean, they've been crashed around for a long time.
Right. So they've been around for. We had a contactee, and her father was a hybrid. He was born around 1920 or something, in the turn of the last century. So we've had the hybridization program. We've had alien craft. We have, the Anunnaki story converging with the modern era. And so what I'm looking at, and you said the cell phones are affecting everything. So we have all these waves going around the planet. I guess the original technology that was global was more crystal based, and now we have whatever this vibratory frequency is. It definitely is disruptive, and so we're not able to compute. So what do we do? It's everywhere.
You again, it comes back to a personal nature on this stuff. When you're looking at a personal deal, it's you yourself asking for protection as much as you can. In other words, demand that you be protected as you're going through, because your thoughts are demanding you put it up, and ask for the help that you can get from our other dimensional plans or off planet. The people that read our material, the handbook and embracing and stuff, if you actually read them, you'll be totally blown away about what you're going to look at the world, because you look at it totally different, and then you'll be an understanding of why I'm so gung-ho running around the world trying to change it. I mean, I go all around the world. I've been every place, lecturing, I show pictures, I show everything I can, trying to get people to awaken that it's more than this physical thing. And the first thing they do is they run back to their family and they get, how we're going to get them awakened. But we bring people in. It's like we bring people into the planet for the education. We went forth to multiply. Now China woke up. Remember, they only allowed one person until this a couple months ago. Now they're allowing 2, for their population, because the population was starting to shrink to produce everything. Well, the planet itself is so overpopulated. That's the problem.
What about opening up space and colonizing? Isn't that the next logical step, that if we could just go out there and start colonizing, we could ease the population?
Yeah, the ETs won't allow it, because what they said at this time, it's not a question. Brian O'Leary is an Apollo astronaut, a good friend of mine. He was supposed to go to Mars, as a matter of fact. And I've talked to a couple other. We never went to the moon. I mean, we've been going to the moon with other technology before that, and then they're coming out with stuff as they're seeing on Mars. Mars was inhabited by humans. And then we migrated from there to here. And planet Earth was engineered because it had a lot of, chemicals and stuff and the stuff to make it so we have. So we're kind of if we want to call it, a hybrid of all kinds of stuff at this minute. Right. And now the next step is, where do we go from here? And there's thousands of planets that are inhabited with humanoids. When I was in Switzerland, I actually have pictures. I was there. Billy was playing, one of the ETs had a little ray gun, and we shot holes through the tree. I got pictures of all this stuff. I took them myself when I was there. And I'm sitting here looking at it. They use it for protection. That's all they do, because thou shalt not, the real, the so-called commandment, thou shalt not kill. The real one is, thou shalt not murder thy fellow man in thought or deed. So we have to rethink ourselves, right? And another one of the ones that I joke about is, thou shalt keep the Sabbath day holy. Which day is it?
Yeah.
You know what day it is?
For some people it's Saturday, so some people it's Sunday, and
you give thanks every day.
Every day, yeah.
Every day you're part of the creation. This how we're doing it. As the creation itself is trying to figure out what it is. I'm joking with the ETs, and I said, okay, you live to be 1,000 years old, which they did. And I said, what's above the creation? And, their answer back to me, which was kind of like when I was in Australia, but the answer back to me was, there's still mysteries for them. Now this Australian, I'll make this is a real, truly happened. I had a couple of my buddies, and we flew out to the outback down in Australia. There's absolutely nothing out there, right? I'm standing up there where I'm just looking at, all of a sudden a little Aborigine appeared, and he comes up and he's talking to me. He's a little short guy, probably, 4 foot tall. And he says, what are you guys here for? I said, I'm just exploring the world. And he says, you're not a missionary? And I says, no. And he goes, oh, good. I says, why's that? He says, turn around. And he pointed up. And he says, you see that? He's pointing at the sun. He says, that's my God. I can live without your God. You can't live without mine.
Hey, George, what about the argument that some people make, Marduk in particular, said that this strife on this planet is all just part of our growth process of our souls?
Well, we've engineered it that way, but that's not true. Because the soul energy itself was given the rule book, and we knew we weren't supposed to have it. But right now, we've only had, in the last 10,000 years, 10,000, there's only 250 years that didn't have war. Mm-hmm. Wow. Can you imagine? So what we're looking at, because of the other rule, now I didn't go into the other rule book. I'm not going to go into it. We'll use that some other day on a program or something, or they can go to my website and order the book. But it goes in, and there's 18 rules that we're supposed to be living on this physical thing. But it's we're running out of time. So the best thing I can do is give the people the stuff that's, come to the point, and that's the handbook, Embracing Rainbow and Becoming, to give them those. And those are not easy rides. They're easy for you to understand them, because you're going to rethink everything. We've been programmed in school, if you call it, the education is basically all a lie. And so what's happening, I'm like you. I want to get these things out. Yeah. The first people do are got to go protect yourself, right? That's what we think about. We've got to protect yourself from what? If everybody lived in balance, in other words, thou shalt not steal or something, emotionally or otherwise, you start looking at all the regular rules. If we could get the planet back in balance, it'd be okay. Well, it's like my dad when I was a kid. I says, what church is the right one? He said, you go out and check them all out. So I went and did a lot of different ones to find out what they were all about, and then found out a lot of them have similarities. A lot of them have the same books. And then you start reading their books, and somebody's modified them somewhere. In other words, to come up to the current benefits that they have right now. It's strange. Mm-hmm. So it isn't a question of going to church and praying to Jesus to come save him. Now that'll all open up the other Pandora's box while we're here. When I was a kid, I was 14 years old. Dr. Walter Moyer was a friend of the family. He was on the team of doctors and scientists that digging up the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's no mention of Jesus anywhere. He come back, he says, let me tell you the real story of that prophet, and that's basically what they considered him. He said, he went out, he's trying to wake people up. teaching the rules of the universe that we're supposed to live by. It's kind of like what I just talking about, the law of attraction, what you put out, you're going to get back, what you sow, that. Anyway, he was out trying to do all this stuff. His father happened to be an extraterrestrial, Gabriel. They even mention it, but they don't tell you how it comes. Gabriel impregnated Mary. Now, then they have him, and his name was Emmanuel. In the King James Bible, Matthew 1, verse 24, I think it is. It'll tell you that was his name, Emmanuel. Now, different Bibles will spell it different, some with an I, some with an E. The story that he gave me when I was a kid, I'm reading and I said, this is it clears up the whole message, and listen to this man. And we go on about that deal. And by the way, he didn't die on the cross. I mean, basically, he was impaled, but went into a coma, and his disciples pulled him off the next morning. And in fact, it's mentioned in the first 4 books of the New Testament, where they saw him the next day. Anyway, he hightailed it off to Srinagar, India. And India has a movie on it. That's where his tomb is. Anyway, as I'm going over with Billy-meier, Billy and a Greek priest by the name of Rashid were taken to a tomb where wrapped in resin was the original writings of, if you want to call it Jesus, call him, his scribe. Because people didn't read or write back then. But his scribe wrote all this stuff down, about all this stuff. Anyway, I'm reading all this documents, and I said, my gosh, Billy, I said, this should be put out to the world, because it will change the biblical understanding of what happened, of why this guy was here. So anyway, I took the information. I came back, I told Billy, I said, my problem with this whole deal is that, you've given away the rights to your story, but you didn't give it away to this, because this is your story. The Greek priest, and you guys did it. Well, the Greek priest translated it from Aramaic into Schweizerdeutsch, or High German. We had a college kid over there translated it into English, so I had the English translation, which was rough. Well, when we come over here, we took it and we sent it out to some people before I sent it out to get it verified. Well, one of them we sent it to Dr. Jim Deerdorf, who's a professor at the University of Oregon. And, of course, Jim was a, quote, born again. He said, I'm going to disprove the document. But if you go to www.tjresearch.net, or anyway, TJ Research, you'll pull up and he'll give you all of the information, and he verified it. So it's the original writing, so you can get the whole real story of who Emmanuel was. But he was basically a product down here trying to wake people up then, 2,000 years ago.
Questions on that? I have some questions on that. You're saying that that Jesus was the product of Mary and Gabriel. What extraterrestrial species was Gabriel?
Gabriel was a Pleiadian.
A Pleiadian. And are Pleiadians Anunnaki?
The other way around.
No, the Anunnaki was another group. We're all, the trouble is we have a lot of these things. The Anunnaki, where did they come from? I've got that information someplace, but you can break them all down. The Anunnaki was just another period of giving us information. And if you go into it, you read the Genesis, gives you a lot of the truth. Actually, the real stuff was when you start looking at Zechariah Sitchin's book.
Right.
Have you read of all of his stuff?
Oh, yeah, we write books on Zechariah Sitchin. So I'm tying in the Gabriel, and El is God, so it's something of El, whatever a Gabriel is of El.
Yeah, well, anyway, Gabriel was a physical person, so you're looking at it. There's a physical thing going on, and there was an experiment, because in the book of Genesis, it talks about him coming down and mating with the women. He just happened to have the DNA. They set up the DNA programming, and Mary was special, and the two of them, for his mission. And frankly, what I'm trying to do is wake up people by reading these books. It will click in, because you've got a specific mission that you're doing right now. Right. You're trying to wake people up. Well, so if you're doing that, like myself, wake up to who and what we are. Where did we come from in the first place? Because you didn't originate here. I don't think this is your first lifetime.
No, I think we have simultaneous lifetimes in many dimensions, many planets.
That's right. You can, which you do. You can do that. You can move in and out of lifetimes. Now the question is the training and stuff that you have to get to that point. It's not an automatic. Hey, I'm going to school for a week and you learn how. As well as you know, you've been out teaching it. Mm-hmm. It takes a while so you can get to people so they can live simultaneously on and off planet. I call it. Mm-hmm. And then be in communication with others that want to assist at this point, because this is a great, what I call it, like, look what happened to Australia. We sent all the prisoners down to, from England and France down to Australia. They turned out pretty good.
Right.
Well,
right.
Yeah.
This is a prison planet. Who's our prisoners?
Pardon?
Earlier on, you said that this is a prison planet. Who set up the Earth as a penal colony?
Oh, they sent it up because they were moving people that were not following the rule books, and they set them out. Well, this is a group that goes back at the same time that you're talking about. Several times it's been used to get rid of the remnants within the universe. Mm-hmm. Hoping that we would, between the DNA training and the, genetic modifications and everything else, that they would make it so we would become back in balance in the universe. That's the reason why they want to take it. You know what they told me on the ETs? They said, we'll take you to another, you want us to come down and lift you off and take you to our planet. And they said, you trash our planet in half the time.
Right. Okay. Do you have any questions, Sasha? Or comments?
No, just that the Pleiadians settled Nibiru, and the Nibirans came to the king of Nibiru sent his problem children to get rid of them. They to Earth to run the gold mining operation here.
Well,
the gold mining was originally for the blacks, because gold is used throughout the universe. It's a metal that is highly conductive. It doesn't rust. It doesn't mess down. And so the original ones originally were the blacks mining the gold in Africa. This go round now, you go back. We're getting evidence now. When I was in Switzerland, this just recently. Anyway, I'm over in Switzerland. I'm walking down the road by Billy's house just to check in with this farmer. I said, you seen anything strange? And the farmer, of course, he's all excited. He said, come with me. And I come out the back. He says, I'm milking the cow. Look down there. And there's a huge footprints. And he said that the guy's 7 meters tall leaning against the barn. And of course, I'm all thrilled here. I'm looking at the footprints. I didn't see this tall person. Anyway, I come running back to Billy, and he just shrugged his shoulders and grabbed me and took me in the back room, and he showed me plaster casts of little people. He says, don't you know the story, leprechauns and fairies? In other words, we're being visited by all kinds of sizes and shapes, and we are today on the planet. I mean, I get pictures from all over the planet right now. People sending them to me of different UFOs that some are landed, some are not. I went to a crop circle outside of Denver. I've got it all over the place. And we were trying to, why did they have it? The crop circles, the purpose of the crop circles are two things. Number one is to have you ponder what they are. And the second thing is, the real reason is to stabilize the planet so it doesn't flip on its axis prematurely.
So the crop circles, they have properties that can stabilize the planet?
Well, they're focusing the energy in these in these points. They spell that out in the second book, by the way, Embracing the Rainbow.
Okay.
Okay.
So are you still in contact with extraterrestrials? And if so,
oh yeah. Once you get tuned in, you can't turn them off. I mean, I guess you could do it. It's a little hard to do that, but it's like right now, Jill and I both woke up at 4 a.m, and we both and they're urging us to get ourselves balanced at this thing, because the chaos, and of course out of the chaos we have to create something new. And that's all spelled out in the books that we're talking about. But as the chaos is going to be increasing, people won't know what to do, and they're going to be looking for, they're going to look for somebody to save them, not realizing that they got to save themselves. Well, I mean, Christ said that. He said, what I do, you can do and greater. And what you sow, you shall reap. So this is the game. We have to get each person aware of that. So what am I looking at right now? We're talking about the food. My suggestions, because of what they've got planned, and that's under the FEMA rules right now, is basically you better get yourself a couple months worth of food stored up. I don't care who you are. I'm also urging, because they're getting ready and they're already doing this, is issuing debit cards for everybody, as you know. They're going to get rid of the cash here before long. I mean, the country's 100 trillion in debt. There's no such animal. So to rationalize all this, they're going to come in with a debit card for everybody. But temporarily, when all this comes in, you're going to have something to trade with your friends. And my suggestion is have a couple months in 1s, 5s, 10s, nothing over a 20, because there won't be any change out here.
Wow. So we're all going to starve at once for the people that aren't planned, and then it's going to just create massive chaos, and people are going to start eating each other's.
Well, we've got all kinds of things going on. You have no idea. You know, if you go see how people can exist, if you want to go to Haiti. I mean, I spent time over there. I mean, these people are still living on $1 a day.
Right.
You know, but the trouble is with Haiti, the AIDS is it's an epidemic over there, as you know, and it's a real problem.
So what are some of the positive things? We've got another approximately half hour. Let's talk about... Okay,
well, right now, the positive things I want you to... the very first rule in the universe is gain all knowledge. Why? So you can wisely discern what's coming down. Discernment is the big thing. And I don't want you to get scared. I get prepared is the game. In other words, we know you're reading about it, and every day in the paper you're seeing it on TV and everything, but you can't ignore it. Ignoring it is not a good picture. So just be aware of it. The best thing to do is I try to get people get in the observer mode. There's a huge play that's being played on the whole planet. And there's only a few people that are manipulating it, but you and I, we have the ability to change a lot of this by what? Our thoughts. If we get enough people to rethink the ending of the story, and then we sit back, and then we explain to them this has all been a lie. But what is the biggest thing right now? Everybody get them interested in what? Sports and entertainment? What happened yesterday? $110 million was spent by people going to see Star Wars.
Oh, yeah. Does that have any real information in it, or is that just all entertainment? Sometimes they slip in.
No, the original ones, Star Trek and stuff, was all taken off of government documents.
Taken off
Great
of what?
light.
Government documents.
Yeah. Government documents, right? So.
That's Star Trek.
Star Trek.
That's right.
It's Roddenberry and.
But when they started putting the movies together, I was back there, trying to get some of that stuff squared away too, to get it out there and get the truth out. So they couldn't put it out because you give them too much truth, and the people would go again. The religious end of the world, they're going to be, the devil's coming or something like that. Well, let's get somebody out there. There's no devil. There's no God. What it amounts to is there's the creation itself, and then we're part of it. That's all. We're a particle of the thought of the creation made manifest. So now we have to come back to this understanding of who and what we are, what we can do. I told you, get your food stored up right now, whatever you can. Get the education, like reading these books. I give them out. People are getting them all over the country. You should read some of these documents that I get, or go to Amazon, read the write-ups of the people that's already read the books.
Yeah.
So you get an understanding that it is clicking on the minds, and that's what makes me, so I'm on the radio programs with you and Sasha. And Sasha, you're out here getting people all wound up so they can understand and keep yourself physically fit while we're doing this. The trouble is, what's the problem? We get so many foods with poison in it that it breaks us down. So now we have to get another education, right?
That's right.
So that's your job, and my job is to, first thing, gain all knowledge, try to apply it so we can live in some kind of balance, and then get into a position of being in the observer mode. This is a huge play. Just observe it. Don't get caught up in the drama.
Great. So what's all this, are we going to have another false flag? We keep having false flag events. What do you think's gonna? They want us to have World War III. I'm still perplexed about the 500 million number. I mean, where are you going to put them? We have more than
can I tell you? I have all the documents. I could give them to you, but then you're going to get scared. We are going to have World War III. We were hoping that we'd be able to deflect that. Now, World War III is going to last, what did they say, 3 years and 7 months. And then we're going to have a 2-year hiatus, and then it's going to start over again, World War IV. But right now, we're going to be, because of the disruption of the economic system and everything else, you're not going to stop World War III. Like my son, when I talk to my son, he says it's already started.
So is it going to be like World War II, where it was global, or is it going to be regionalized?
Oh, we're going to get the whole plant. Look, when Obama was over there with the leaders over in China, with the head honcho up there, he told them, "You don't know how many nuclear bombs we have." And North Korea has them. You also know that Iran has them all too. Russia's been providing them. The game over there in Europe is really easy to look at. They're really in a real mess at this minute. Iran has always been, they're pretty heavy. I talked to a bunch of the Iranian ambassador, actually the Iranian ambassador in Los Angeles, and we were discussing this, because they're highly educated. They're very nice people. They got all this stuff out of it. They made a deal, when the Shah of Iran was around, we had a different kind of a deal. Well, Russia and China, Russia provides all the nuclear reactors and everything for Iran right now. They make electricity, which they sell to Europe. What does Russia sell to Europe? Natural gas. You see what the balance is? Mm-hmm. Anyway, they've got all the stuff. Russia has all the nuclear stuff. You can bet Iran has it all already anyway. What difference does it make? The wild card is the other ones, Pakistan, and look what's going on between India and over there. All these people have nuclear. China is loaded with it. They got it all. There was a nuclear submarine that was off of we're outside of Los Angeles just 2 months ago. It was in the paper.
So we're going to have these nuclear explosions. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we're going to have them. It's going to come down. Now, what do you think it's bothering me?
Closed system. It's a closed system. It's not like you can nuke at that level and have anything survive. Who'll be left?
That's right.
Planet.
Well, the safest place is going to be the southern hemisphere. Why do you think a lot of my friends are going that direction? So I moved. I'm in a small town in between the mountains in Montana, right as we speak. But I have another places, and I also have places I can run to in other parts of the world. And when I look at the current, and I'm exploring this stuff, and you can pull it up on, World Watch if you want to, and look at it. But the winds that are coming from the North Pole, they go to the equator. They don't spill over to the southern end. There's a different direction. And the same thing coming up. So whatever the radiation, and most of the radiation is going to be in the northern hemisphere. Not that it doesn't get over there because of the water currents and change. That takes a little bit more. Like the whole west coast is being bombarded, as you know, and coral reefs and fish and everything's dying off. What we're going to do is this is a huge play that people put together. The Plan 2000, every congressman and senator got copies of it, and I published books actually on a lot of this stuff. The Conspirators' Hierarchy, the Committee of 300, the 300 families that control the whole planet. I published it all. Do you think that's going to make any difference? Like I tell people, don't get focused on that. Get focused on trying to keep in balance, keep your family with food. Economically, we're going to be stuck with a stupid debit card, but you want to have something to trade while they're doing this on while they can. And we know that the dollar's going away. And you and I mentioned just a minute ago, the only real currency, according to the World Book, is gold. That's what they use between countries. So if you have large amounts, then my suggestion to get some gold and stuff, and this will be trading. Now the problem is again, government-wise, and this is a good, just so you know, they're getting it so if you go use, for instance, cash, you can't get more than $2,000 to $4,000 in cash out of a bank without them reporting it, or depositing it. Now, this happened just on Friday. That's only a couple of days ago. I got notice that Chase, you ever heard of that bank?
Oh, yeah.
asking for identification for everybody that cashes a $100 bill.
Oh my gosh.
Is that close? I'm just making you aware. The first thing is try to be aware of the big problem. Don't get caught up and say, wait a minute, we're going to change it. You're not going to change their plan. I've already been trying to do that. I mean, I've got senators and everybody else that are falling out of the system and, leaving the country, frankly. But they're doing on the side. Good friend of mine, is down in Australia right now. I mean, I get, we email back and forth because they know where they're trying to be in some kind of safety. Nothing's going to be safe other than your own self and being in balance, understanding there's a huge big play that's going on between the good and the bad guys. And the good guys are like you, trying to wake people up. Okay. And you've already admitted you get a lot of the information, now just put it together. And what we're trying to do is put it together like in the handbook and the books that I'm talking about.
So let me ask you something here. Let me just clarify something. So we're going to have World War III. The goal is to reduce the population down to 500 million. Who wants to do this, the 500 million? There's somebody who has the big picture. Right, I've got the big picture that you talked about right here, right in front of your face.
Well, I sat in on the meetings. I gave you the name of one of them.
Right, so somebody expects to be alive and part of the 500 million. I don't have a ticket for the 500 million. I know that. I'm not one that won that lotto. There's going to be, you said 8 billion.
20,000 Americans survive.
Only 20,000. I don't have that.
20 million Americans is the goal. I don't know. I sat with the governor of Colorado. I'll give you their name, with Dick Lamb. Dick and I'm sitting in the Oval Office in Denver, and he says, I'm finishing my tour, and he says, I'll be done. I got my ticket. And I said, ticket? What ticket? And then I got a whole explanation on the underground facilities in Pine Gap, Australia. Go look it up on the internet.
Oh yeah, we know about Pine Gap. So we don't have to worry because we're going to get wiped out. If your job is to be wiped out, then allow it to happen. If that's it. But my job and your job is not that, but that's to put out information to awaken people so we can at least have a bigger remnant. There's a possibility, and which scares me, that we may not have any of them down here. And because I volunteered to be here at this mess at this time, I'm suggesting my soul journey could be collapsed and stuck around for another 26,000 years on a cycle. You understand? Right. All right. So there's this great World War III, and you think that after World War III, and we get down to 500.
Well, don't say I don't. I'm not going to. Don't even go there. That's the plan to have in balance. I mean, Kissinger filled it all out. Go pick up his new book, One World Order. He lays it all out. He's got a brand new book just came out.
Yeah, I studied it in detail. It's an excellent book.
Well, but he was in on the meetings. I'm just telling you. Kissinger said our number one problem: we got too many people on the planet. And so what do you do if you're stuck and you're in charge? And remember, he was just all over the place. If you're in charge of this thing and we got a world situation, we got to keep everything in balance with all the different, quote, belief systems and all the rest of it. How do you set it up when you know that the planet can't sustain it? How do you get people educated? You don't. Because they're all stuck in the movies. Like you say, get their number one thing to get all this thing, get people interested in entertainment and sports.
So when we get the planet down to 500 million, and it's all going to be in Australia right now because we wiped out the rest of the world.
No, they're not going to have. There's not that many people. Look, how many people living in Canada there right now?
I know. It's like I look out the window here, and there's a big Costco, and there's a huge, infrastructure across the planet. So a lot of these things are just going to go be rotten or blow up or burn up or whatever. And
we got huge cities being built. I have a whole group of people that are sitting in, our great new city they built, created out of nowhere over in the Far East, as you know. Everybody's going to Dubai. Yeah. Dubai doesn't have a septic system.
Yeah, it's the ocean.
No, they're not in the ocean either, but isn't that terrible? Look at these high rises. You see all the pictures and everything. They don't have a septic. They have to take all the waste and truck it away.
Oh.
Can you imagine building a city with all that? And China built a whole city because remember they changed the three rivers. So they got, and they know it's all set up on it, and they know there's a lot of it. But there's a difference. The plan. If you go into it, when I sat in on the meetings, I said, wait a minute. They said. I said, where's your clarification? Who's going to be left again? Well, it's primarily education. We're not educating the people. Anybody over age 44 are to be eliminated unless you have a talent that they can use. I mean, they've already got it in writing. You can read it, but I don't want to be going that direction. We don't talk about what they've got planned. What we got to do is how can we offset all this? And the offsetting is to get aware of, number one, what they got planned. Second thing, don't get caught up in the drama, but just stay in the observer mode, but protect yourself greatly. Get as much connection and off-plan as you can. And again, what little prayer? I am a human becoming. Help me become. That gives the permission from other entities to communicate with you. And if you start getting information, discern it, because there's games played on that and on other levels.
Okay. Where do you want to go? We've got, let's see, it's 39 going on to the top of the hour. What do we want to cover here? You've got so much information, and it's all incredibly interesting and relevant.
Well, you tell me. Well, that's what you invited me on because I was going to give you a lot of information. You tell me which way we'd like. I'll be glad to expand on any direction.
I'd like to know about your wonderful wife. Tell us about Jillian.
Well, Jillian, when we come into this life, most of us, we forget who and what we are. First 2 years of your life, you tend to, as a baby, you tend to remember a lot of it, but we kind of, put it out. As you know, Jillian has total recall for 10,000 years of being on this planet.
Yes.
So it's an interesting thing. She's also a world-famous clairvoyant, as you are well aware. She's able to sit with you and basically know who and what you're doing. So she has that ability, but there's a lot of people that do that. So we're going from that standpoint. She has that thing. That doesn't mean anything. We have people used to call all the time because they want to be told what they should be doing and right or wrong. Well, each one of us should be doing that on lessons of discernment ourselves, frankly. But it's nice to be awakened. She's been told the same thing about, like me. They won't tell her who I was because if I wake up to who I was, then I wouldn't be here. That's a good plan, isn't it?
Game over. So you don't have any, remembrances of being an extraterrestrial or simultaneous?
Oh, no, I've been taking aboard craft, and I remember some of the meetings. The only problem is that I'm starting to remember more of it, and that's more responsibility than I shouldn't have. Did I want to do that? How about being responsible for saving the planet?
Well,
I really have to, and I'll add more fun to this. When I got involved with the Talmud of Emmanuel, bringing over the documents, we started printing in that. Well, that opened up the Pandora's box because we came in direct contact with, if you want to call him Christ, at that point. Anyway, at that point, I agreed to publish information to awaken that up. So all of a sudden, I'm involved with that religious sector with our book, The Spiritual Laws and Lessons, and he calls himself Sananda right now. I've been called many things, but Sananda. And I find out he's taken on a couple jobs, and one of them is this one, and 2 other planets that are going through this same deal. Anyway, the same thing is, how do you get information out to other people when all of your connections to other dimensions being blocked? And it's being blocked because we got everybody focused on the TV or the movie theater or the cell phones or the whatever we got, that's cutting down the signal that we're losing, and that's what's happening. It's a real challenge.
So what did he come up with?
Well, yeah, what he come up with is I published a book of it that gives you the complete rundown of the total truth of all of the so-called spiritual laws of the universe, how we're supposed to be live in balance.
Mm-hmm.
I have all of those. I mean, I don't know if I had one with me or I would have sent one to you, but you know, you can get them on my website. It's called The Spiritual Laws and Lessons of the Universe. The handbook and stuff is from a higher level than that, and they refer to it, that they say you better be focusing on how we can provide a bigger solution on the universe to get you over, because how you live your daily life, that's all in the spiritual laws, and it would change a lot of ways people think.
Yeah.
I mean, it really will. I don't know if you've read part of it or not, but it totally changes a lot of ways. So you look at it and say, look at all this stuff. I mean, you know, if one of the big things in the thing, we've had used sex as a recreational sport, and it's not to be. It only has one purpose, and that's reproduction. But if you have reproduction, then it brings it down to what? See what I mean? You can have some big changes when you read the reasoning and the logical reasoning behind it all.
So you're saying that old people aren't supposed to have sex?
That's right.
Wow. What if they do? Can't they just do it because they want to share love?
Well, they spell it out. They say don't pay any, well, the Chinese are that way. You're just not supposed to do it unless you're reproducing. But the same position, when you read it, it's another focus. It's not that you do that, but as they can, frankly, what they say, most sex is mutual masturbation.
Mm-hmm. So you're supposed to have self-sex or no sex?
That's right. They say no sex because you're focusing on the physical body, which is this rhetoric again.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah. I don't think I agree with that one, but...
Well, a lot of people, hey, it's a big deal. It's just one of those things. It's what makes you feel good, and people say, okay, that's it. The trouble is, if you look at that one deal, that's put this planet in jeopardy. The planet was engineered for 500 million people. We got 8.3 billion.
Well,
what was that for?
That's still the 500 million number, because there's a lot of land. It seems like if you just had 500.
No, I took the same thing you did. You have to understand. I studied geophysics at the College School of Mines. When I'm sitting here, this is Kissinger again. I'm looking at this stuff and said I'm going to prove it. So I flew to Washington D.C. and I suggest you do it 5 blocks north of the White House, called the World Watch Association. In it, you're going to get all the details on the use of everything. And you can pull up their website and read some of it. We are running out of all the materials to cover the planet. There's no way we can do anything except for getting ready for the war and massive starvation.
So
we're polluting everything.
500 million just seems so few. I mean, when I grew up in the 60s, there were 3 billion. And there seemed to be a lot of...
In the 60s, there was about 5 billion, when you're talking about then. And now we're at 8.3 billion, increasing by, 2.5 million every 10 days. Hey, I was a developer. God, that sounded really good to me all of a sudden. My dad was in the meat business. Oh, we can have more cattle. We were selling and we're doing all that. But except for, what does it cost to feed a cow? How much water are we using up? How much? There isn't, if you want to get it, pull up the documents at World Watch Association on the internet right now and read their current stuff that they give you to read.
Okay. So I'm looking at the population clock. In 1950 it was 2,556,000,000. 60 was 3,039,000, whatever. It was 3.5 million. So it wasn't in the 3 million. It didn't didn't go over 4 million until 1970 was 3,706,000.
Billion. You're talking about billions now because population of the United States is 300 million.
Right. So sorry, I'm saying the wrong thing. I'm reading sideways. So it was 2 billion in the 50s, 2.5, and then it went to, by the 80s it was 4,453,000,000. So it didn't go to 5 billion. I mean, according to the internet, but of course, who knows how accurate anything is.
Well, it's like go to China. How do you count 1,300,000,000 people? Or go to India. You can't count them all. You know, they got 500 million there. They've been sure who and what they are. In India, it's got over 1 billion people. The educated ones know what's going on, but a lot of people over there still don't read or write.
So you're saying that most of the planet has to just be in nature.
No, the resources are being stripped by the population and being ruined by our practices.
Right.
It's ruined by corporations and all this, controlled by a few people that are taking all the numbers and come back and said, look, I'm going to put money in building, put out 10,000 head of cattle because I got to feed these people. Or I got McDonald's. I owned a chain of restaurants at one time. So we can sit down there and look at the commodities that we're buying to feed the restaurants. And look at the restaurants, They're sitting down with a certain amount they come in. And how much do we lose? With 20-25% of the food that you buy is wasted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but you look at that and go down to Haiti. And it just blew me away when I went down there. It's like, when our dear buddy, the Clinton, went on down to Haiti to help them, they got all that money. None of it went to help the Haitians. It's still in their foundation.
Right.
I was with the vice president of a small company called Haynes Corporation. I was down in Costa Rica because I was down there with him. He was shutting down his plants down there that are making, Haynes, their clothing.
Right.
And moving them all to Haiti because they could get people over there to work for $1 a day. Because everybody demands to get the cheapest you can get at any time, right? And if the food, we got to get you addicted to it. So what they do is they put in a little chemicals all of them. Now, my dad's packing house, we made everything. The sausages, the whole work, you name it. So I learned how to make it and get people so they're palatable to go do it. Well, meanwhile, the poor farmer out here is taking all the water. He's feeding us stuff. And meanwhile, the University of Fort Collins up there at their veterinary side, my dad helped them, allowed the veterinarians who were experimenting, injecting different things into cattle to make them so they get bigger and all that kind of stuff. And I got to see all kinds of what we call, alternative beings that were being created by the veterinarians as they were trying to engineer to get the plants so they had more food for us to eat. And most of the genetically stuff is carried back down. I'm in there in the packing house as they're slaughtering the animals to see the diseases that we have in them already.
So the extraterrestrials, do they do this type of analysis when they colonize all the planets in the...
Well, they don't say psychoanalysis. They do the engineering on the planet, how much or what they have to do to change it so it can sustain the life based on what they are. Because each one of us are different. You have a certain oxygen intake, you have a certain amount of carbon, all these things. Every planet has different ones. That's the reason why you have different sizes and shapes.
Mm-hmm.
You have little people. They live on a planet. People on Mars still right now.
So
that'll be all coming out. You'll see a lot of stuff coming out as they let it go. And, when Brian and I were discussing that, because they were going to send him up there, it's a one-way deal. You look at the moon shuttle. You look at all the rockets. We send them up there. You tell me they're going to do that and bring back a shuttle from the moon after they send it up there. Look how much energy it took to get up there.
Right.
The whole thing is a big movie. Welcome to Planet Earth, a big movie right now, a big experiment, and Planet Earth is going to go through enormous chaos. And everybody that's listening, just sit here and meditate for a minute and say, I'm a human becoming, help me become. That's allowing the extraterrestrials to set up. And then, again, I tell you, get as much knowledge as you possibly can. Listen to both of you guys are putting out information. Put that out. Have them. I'm telling everybody to search it all out. Get the books. Read my books that I have, because we give you a lot of sources of where you can get them. I got all carried away at first. I thought I could name everybody, and that's going to make a big difference. It won't make any difference because they change. How do you know Obama's real? How do you know any of these things?
Right. Sasha, any questions or information? You're so quiet.
I'm just taking it in. Carpe diem, live right now.
Yeah.
Hey, you got it. Live right now. But the right has to be in balance. Remember the last thing I told you. Everything has to come into balance. In other words, if you grow food, you have enough so it sustains itself and the planet and whatever else is around. If we have any excess to help others, that's great. But right now, we're raping the entire planet. Do you realize how much farmland in the United States has been basically destroyed because of the weather changes that are going on?
Right. So if we were a conscious species and we just looked at this rationally, we'd say, okay, we've got to colonize some other worlds and remove, 7 billion people or whatever, to take off the stress to our planet, which would reset and put it back to balance, I guess. If we would just get out of here, the Earth would be fine without us, so to speak.
We don't. It takes enormous. Takes enormous, well, it doesn't even take the energy required, because a lot of the pictures and stuff I have, you can see the craft becoming invisible as they do their, going to 300 light years in a few minutes. I mean, they can switch things around. There's things that are happening simultaneously that are going on. But what you're saying, okay, great, just like I was, okay, we got this, let's get the population back down, where do we send them? Meanwhile, the guys over here just saying, hey, most people that are, retired they're no longer what they consider useless eaters. What are they doing? They're just consuming. And people that are on Social Security now, that's all they're doing is taking money that doesn't exist, and they don't have it. They didn't set anything aside, did they? Because they were worker bees out here. They put people to work, that's all.
So then if we were a conscious society, we would just, everybody who's over 50, take your cyanide or something. I mean, I'm trying to look at this.
No, you can't do that. That's against the law, too. Thou shalt not commit suicide. That's self-murder.
Okay, so we're at a catch-22. We need to reduce the population. I don't think war is a very conscious action. Go ahead, Sasha.
Oh, just Moni Nog showed a long time ago that if you have the means to say no, women can say no, and the right to say no, and the education, they will automatically limit their populations. And so what you need to do is get past all the incentives to multiply. And the Chinese have one way of looking at it, but it really comes down to people don't want to reduce their own lifestyle by having too many children.
It's too late for that. We've got too many
It's
people
not
right
too
now.
late. You can turn it around immediately.
So if everybody stopped breeding today, and based on the death rate, how long before we reset this to a number which would not be deploying the planet to this point of destruction? That's what I'm just putting out there.
What I'll need to do so we can get this thing, I'm going to read you just the first paragraph of the handbook. This is a point in the evolution of the planet that brings to the forefront of each individual's thought the question of why me, why now, and what's really going on in the reality that is right now in the time we are experiencing. What really is going on behind the scenes we are aware of to the five senses? Why is there a feeling that there's just more to the story than just appearances? Who indeed has set this up and is pulling the strings? Is it really just a group of somebody that is in charge? If this isn't the case, then is this God thing really a hoax after all? There are those who believe that to be the true essence of the scenario. Fortunately for the good of all, that's not all the truth. The truth is there's multiple levels of activity behind what appears to be a play of incredible magnitude. Who then is writing the script, the lines for the characters, and what is the point of the script? Would you be surprised to learn that you're writing the lines, and until you can figure out a point to the script, there is none? Mm-hmm. How's that for a first begin? That's the beginning of the handbook to the new paradigm.
That's wonderful. Love it. Wow.
And the summation of it, what they say, the messages contained in this handbook are intended to lift mankind from the entrapment of the victim consciousness that keeps the level of experience ensnared in fear and frustration. Humanity was intended to live, not in luxury, but in abundance. The information found between these covers will lead all that read and reread with an open mind to the discovery of the truth of who and what they truly are. The end of the search for these answers is provided at last in clarity and conciseness. There are no recriminations or feelings of guilt to be gleaned from the pages. There is clarity and upliftment in each segment. It's the intent and purpose of the book to encourage every reader to live in accordance with the plainly disclosed simple laws that underlie all that each comprehends as life. How's that?
That's great. You have 1 more minute. Do you want to tell everybody how they can reach you? And
Okay, how we can do that is the handbook for the new paradigm is the one we want to start on, and I suggest you go to my website since you're on the internet, nohoax, nohoax.com, and go to the log. You'll see the logs down there, or just look for where you can download it and read the book, and then it triggers everything like it should. Then you can read the next 2, and then you can contact me. There's ways to do it on that. Or even Sasha, he'll answer the questions because he's going to be reading these things pretty decently now.
all right. Well, thank you, George. Once again, that's our music, and that's been a wonderful.
Hey, have a happy end of the year.
Happy holiday season.
Take care, aloha.
Celebrate.
Bye.